There are far worse things to lose than one's possessions. Even Job's great faith wilted when he lost his health. First your savings, then your job, then your children. Finally, you learn you have terminal cancer. How would you handle the loss of everything? Would you curse God and die, as Job's wife urged? Stay tuned for answers to some really tough questions. From the Moody Church in Chicago, this is Running to Win with Dr. Erwin Lutzer, whose clear teaching helps us make it across the finish line. Today, Dr. Lutzer continues his series, God, Why Me?, as we join him for more of his message, God, I've Lost Everything.
Job's wife evidently thought that if her husband could just die, he'd escape all the misery. And throughout time, there have been those who have thought that if they could just commit suicide, it would end it all. There have been people who have phoned me, insisting on an answer to the question, if I commit suicide as a Christian, will I still go to heaven? Because I want to commit suicide so badly, but I still want to be in heaven too. I want you to know that suicide is never the answer. Don't jump off the boat until it makes it to the other side of the shore. Suicide is not the answer. God's grace is going to be sufficient. His ability to keep you and to lead you until it is His time to die is what we believe to be scripturally and solidly based. In fact, if Job had died here, he would have missed what happens in chapter 41 and 42 of his book, and he would have missed the bountiful blessing of God and the insights into God's character, which would have been totally missed if he had have simply said, where is the escape hatch? I am going to die. Well, we have our tape recorder with us, and Job's friends, by the way, come, verse 11, and we won't say much about them, except to say that they come from 3 different countries. Job is a very famous man. And the friends hear about his distress, and they come and they do something very wise. It says in verse 13, they sat down on the ground with him 7 days and 7 nights, and no one was speaking to him, for they saw that his pain was very great. And may I say that that's the thing that they did that was absolutely right. If they had just kept sitting there, we wouldn't have had so many chapters of speeches, for one thing. And for another, we would have discovered that at the end, God would not have been so angry with what they said. But we're ahead of the story. Job has everything. Oh, how wonderful it is to serve God. Job now has nothing, and he begins to moan. At first, he accepted his adversity with a great deal of tranquility and worship, but it begins to get through him. With his health now gone, he begins to moan and to go through a deep period of depression. That's chapter 3. We can't read the entire chapter, though you should do that on your own, and you will find this to be one of the most moving soliloquies that has ever been written. Job says in verse 3, let the day perish on which I was to be born, and the night which said, a boy is conceived. May that day be darkness. Let not God above care for it, nor let the light shine on it. Let darkness and black gloom claim it. Let a cloud settle on it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. You'll notice that he begins to move from faith to despair. And when we pick it up in verse 11, he now goes from understanding to perplexity. And he is very perplexed, and he begins to ask the question, why? Why did I not die at birth and come forth from the womb and expire? He goes on to say in verse 13, if that would have happened, I would have lain down and been quiet and would have slept. Then would I have been at rest with kings and with counselors of the earth who rebuilt ruins for themselves. What an interesting insight. The kings and the counselors thought that they were building huge castles and monuments. And what are they now? They are ruins. He says, I would have been able then to be with those who built ruins for themselves. Or with the princes who had grief. He says in verse 20, why is light given to him who suffers, and life to the bitter of soul? If God knows that Job is going to go through this grief, If God knows that he is going to feel so desperate that he would like to die, why then live at all? What is the purpose of it? What about those who long for death? They seek for it like hidden treasures. Verse 22, who rejoice greatly, they exult when they find the grave. They want to die, and they delight when it comes. Verse 23, why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? For my groaning comes at the sight of my food. I've lost my appetite, I can't even eat. For my cries pour out like water. For what I fear has come upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I am not at rest, and turmoil comes. God, why? Suddenly, Job is up against a God he doesn't know. And the Job that we would have interviewed at the beginning, oh yes, you just serve God and he will bless you. Why, he is so loving that he multiplies his blessings upon those who fear him. And just look at my lovely family and see my crops and my herds and my 10 children who are the envy of everybody in town. And it's because I serve God. Now it's a different story. The kids are dead. He's lost everything that he owns. His own health is gone. He's in pain and grief. And his wife has not been the support that she should be. And now he begins to curse his day. Could I say, by the way, that Job is in the same position as some people in retirement homes today? They say to themselves, I can't serve anymore. Well, Job couldn't serve anymore. There was nothing that he could give to God. Now he didn't even have any wealth to give to God. In fact, there are people today who can no longer serve, but they in turn must be served. And there they are, day after day, wondering why it is that they do not have death come to them when perhaps just across the street there is a child who dies at the age of 2 or 3 or an infant. And we look at it and we ask with Job, why is light given to him who suffers and to the bitter of soul? What's the purpose in it all? Now, I want you to know something. Job did something very wise here in this chapter. He spilled his grief verbally to God.